The secret to transforming upset. Everybody gets upset. It's something that is a part of human life. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Today I'm going to talk to you about the secret of transforming upset. Because when you get mad, the more you hold on to it, it turns into resentment. And resentment is a poison made for another, but drunk by the one who made it. It just eats you up, it tears you up, and it turns you into a very bitter person. Believe me, I know. You see, when I was younger, I was tortured when I was little. Had a lot of bad things happen to me when I was 4 and 5 years old. I don't want to get into details. But I carried a chip on my shoulder for a very long time. Blamed everybody, get really upset when people say certain things. It became really sensitive. It's usually the signs of trauma, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Because when you're a professional, when you're grown up, especially if you own your own business and you are a healthcare practitioner, you're a doctor, and your patient comes in with says some things that can seem disrespectful, or they don't show their appreciation for what you're doing for them. Believe me, I've had this in my life. How do you handle these things like that? How do you deal with anybody coming at you with a blame, with a judgment, with an intention to annoy, with disrespect, with saying things about you that are not true? How do you deal with things like that? Well, the greatest cause of upset are unmet expectations. Because expectations are created by assumptions. You see, when we assume things, we don't have the complete picture. We don't have the complete understanding of something. We only have a partial understanding, and we fill in the gaps with what we want to hear. In other words, we form what's called a cognitive bias. We have a viewpoint, and then we only look for evidence that supports the viewpoint, and we negate everything else. Therefore, we don't see the big picture. We don't see the complete picture. We don't have a comprehensive understanding of the situation or of the matter at hand. So then we assume things. You know what I'm talking about. And then we assume things about other people, and then we get upset towards them. We think they disrespected me, they made something up about me, whatever it is. They didn't follow through with their agreement. They let me down. They judged me. You know, we play victim, and then we want to blame, and we want justification. We want karma, you know what I mean? And we start justifying our resentment, and we feel righteous about it. And it doesn't do anybody any good. The whole thing about upset is there is an agreement that was not met. Perhaps that agreement was never made. It was never expressed. Such as, say, you're a doctor, and if a patient has a problem with you, you form the agreement. If you have a problem with me, call me up. We'll have a consultation. I won't charge you for it. We'll sit down and we'll talk about it. Instead, they may come in and say, you promised this, or when you said this, this happened, or they may want a refund, and after services were rendered, and they may even try to double cross you, sue you, you know what I mean? This happens to many entrepreneurs. You know, if you're an entrepreneur and haven't gotten sued, you haven't been in business long enough. Every entrepreneur that's been in business for a long time has gotten sued. That's what business is insurance for. That's what malpractice insurance is for. So there's a misunderstanding. You know, there is the saying, let's just sit down and have a talk about this. I'm sure we can settle the misunderstanding. We can clear the misunderstanding. There's always a misunderstanding of agreement, a misunderstanding of what one wants to get heard. We all want to be understood, yet we tend to not want to understand. So the way to get out of being upset is to understand the cause of it. The cause of it being an unmet expectation. An expectation that wasn't fulfilled because the assumption or what you wanted wasn't expressed clearly enough. Therefore, there wasn't any true agreement. If you don't express who you are, what you mean effectively, clearly, then the other person isn't going to get you. You're going to assume that they understand you, but they don't. And they could be agreeing to something, some version of you that isn't really you, or some version of the circumstance that really isn't what you intended the circumstance to be. So you need to express yourself, your intention, where you're coming from, clearly enough, and make sure the other person hears you, understands you. This way, when you form the agreement, you know that they're agreeing to something you want them to be, you want to be agreed to. Otherwise, you create a false perception, a false understanding that they can't uphold. They can't agree to something that isn't true. You may assume it to be true, but you didn't express something clearly enough, and they may have misinterpreted what you said and agreed to something other than what you wanted to be heard. That's one part. You need to express yourself clearly enough, and that's for the future, because there are no mistakes, there are only lessons unlearned. What did you learn from this? What was missing? Clear communication. So now I can effectively articulate myself effectively to get the results that I want by expressing what it is that I really mean, what I really want to get heard, where I'm coming from, and what I want to get out of the circumstance or situation. The second part is knowing the other person's level of integrity. Maybe they do get exactly what you mean, but they just want to double cross you. They just want to blow you off because they don't respect you. Or, so you need to know, don't form an agreement with someone who is not trustworthy. Now, I'm not saying they're a bad person. Their demeanor may just lend them to be a free-spirited, spontaneous, impulsive, compulsive type of personality. And why would you want to form an agreement with someone like that in the first place? A friendship, an agreement is really a form of relationship. Whether it's a friendship, or professional or romantic, there is an agreement between two people. Without agreement, nothing works. So the agreement needs to be clearly made, clearly understood. If that agreement isn't clear, then there's going to be misinterpretation. So if you have a person who is compulsive, impulsive, doesn't really keep their word, doesn't keep their promise, so to speak, don't form an agreement with them in the first place, and then you won't set yourself up for disappointment. The other level is, hey, sometimes circumstances just change and doesn't lend for the fulfillment of that agreement. And that happens. Intentions can be thwarted. Intentions, life happens. Somebody dies. Somebody is in greater debt, has a greater need, gets into a car accident and has to pay that off and can't pay you back. Whatever the agreement is, they lose their job. They can't pay their credit card bill. Stuff happens that's out of your control. You can't get upset about things you cannot control because it doesn't matter. You're not going to make a difference in things that you can't control. They're outside of your degree of control. There's nothing you can say or do that will change the outcome of that circumstance because it's out of your control. So why bother getting upset over it? It's not going to change anything. It's a waste of energy. You have every right to be upset because you're let down. But it's not really anger that you're feeling. It's being let down. It's a disappointment. It's a lack of control. When you feel like you don't have control, there's a desire to control, and that's expressed through anger. Because you want to take action, but there's no action you can take that'll effectively create the results that you want because of the circumstances outside of your control. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. In that situation, you have to surrender. You just got to surrender the circumstance, bite the bullet, take it as a loss. So that's how you overcome upset. Now, ultimately, if people are screwing you over, people are stabbing you in the back, people are constantly letting you down, you got to ask yourself, why are you in relation with these people? If you hold yourself to a higher standard of impeccability, for some reason in your life, you decided, I need to hold myself to a higher standard. I don't like who I am. And because of the mistakes I've made, it's because I lacked integrity, whatever the reason is. You want to up your morals. You're stopping drinking. You're stopping lying. You're stopping cheating. Or whatever the situation is. You made a change for the better. You raised your standards. You're committed to those standards. You're living up to those standards. And other people aren't. Yet you're expecting them to live up to those standards that you're living up to. And they're not. And they're not going to. Again, a circumstance outside of your control. You cannot change people. People can only change themselves. You can introduce the benefits. This is something I went through. After I graduated my undergrad, I lived with a Native American medicine woman. It really transformed my mind. Got a degree in psychology. Then I moved to California, lived in a yoga center. Really worked on purifying myself and getting over a lot of fantasies that I created about life. Letting go of attachment to things. And really lived a holistic lifestyle. Ate organic food, stopped partying, lived a really healthy, clean life, a wholesome life, an honest life. I stopped fooling myself. When I moved back to New Jersey, where I was born and raised, I met up with some old friends, and I explained to them the changes that I went through and what a kind of a community that I wanted to experience. They looked at me, yeah, right. It was outside of their comprehension. They couldn't even comprehend what it was I was talking about. Therefore, they couldn't even believe in it. I got sucked back into my old ways, made some poor decisions, and realized that was my own undoing. Those were choices that I made. I had no one else to blame for that. Yes, the temptation was there, but I'm the one who took it up. So I had to own up to that, and I did. And when I did, I cut myself off from those people. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying we didn't share the same values. And you may find yourself in this situation around people whom you've changed, you've grown, and they've grown in a different direction. This may happen in business partners. This may happen with patients. This may happen with staff. You got to cut them loose. You got friends who don't really share the ideals of integrity with you. And they want to continue living a compulsive, impulsive lifestyle, and you don't want to. You see the value of being responsible. You know, a lot of people say you're growing up and they aren't. You're maturing and they aren't. That's usually the expression that is involved in scenarios like that. So you need to cut them off. Doesn't mean you hate them. Doesn't mean you blame them. You made your choices. You got to live with them. And that's what the mistakes you made, the upset, is, well, what was missing was a commitment to your integrity and willing to accept the consequence of that, meaning the ending or distancing of certain relationships. That's what happens in life. As you elevate your game and you elevate your standard, the people around you will change. And when you surround yourself with people of a high degree of integrity, a high level of commitment and focus, your life will launch. You'll go to new levels in your career, in your business. In fact, scaling your business involves that, is surrounding yourself with high-level business people, people who are focused, people who understand metrics and KPIs and ROIs, people who talk the talk and walk the walk. Your team is going to change. You know, to get yourself from 5 figures to 6 figures, you got to brand yourself. People got to know you as a certain business, a certain service. But to go from 6 figures to 7 figures, it requires different levels of teamwork. Who you surround yourself with is who you are. You know, the 5 people around you is really a reflection of you. Birds of a feather flock together. You need to change the flock. You need to fly with a different set of wings. Stop letting yourself down. Stop setting yourself up for disappointment. Upset is always self-generated. It is always an expectation that is unmet, unfulfilled. And what is expectation but assumption? You assumed things, you made things up about people, about life that wasn't true, and therefore you were let down because they could never be true. And when you have an experience of disillusionment, it is often, where did I go wrong? It was your ideas that were unrealistic in a sense. You know, one of the marks of a successful business person is a healthy skepticism, in a sense of an optimistic realist. They're pragmatists. They're not fooled by pipe dreams. Don't be fooled by pipe dreams. You'll never be let down. Always create a clear understanding between you and another person so you have an honest agreement. And uphold your values. What is really important to you? What really matters to you? And live by them and stick by that. Don't ever compromise your values, your worth, your self-worth. And you won't get angry at yourself. Because ultimately all upset at other people is really anger towards yourself. Why did you make that decision? That stupid decision. That's what we tell ourselves. Listen to what you tell yourself, that inner dialogue. And you'll hear that self-criticism and that self-judgment that eats away at your self-worth and your self-esteem. And that's the source of your upset. Transform those thoughts of self-blame, because it always starts with blame. Take responsibility. And then take action. That's how you transform upset. If you want to know more about this, go ahead and click on the link below. We can set up a consultation at no charge. I can give you a 2024 business plan, as well as a mindset coaching session, because it all starts in the mind, and a high-performance nutrition plan that's going to dial in your energy so you have an even-keeled energy throughout the week so you can stay focused throughout the day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Thank you so much for listening.